Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm going to talk about developing a wilderness stewardship plan for Pinnacles National Park. This plan is required to be done, but has not yet begun. So I thought this was a good opportunity to assess the current situation and give some ideas of what I think should be done. In this presentation, I will give a brief introduction to Pinnacles National Park, discuss the need for a wilderness stewardship plan, and apply some of the modern planning principles we have discussed in this course to developing an effective plan. Pinnacles National Park is a small 26,000-acre protected area in central California. Pinnacles is known for its unique geologic formations, the eponymous pinnacles, as well as wildlife such as bees, bats, and the critically endangered California condors, and recreation including camping and rock climbing. Humans have lived in Central California for nearly 10,000 years. The Pinnacles region was primarily occupied by the Ama Mutsun people until the mid-1700s, and then by Spanish and American settlers. Early impact on the wilderness character in the Pinnacles area was minimal. Given the rugged topography and dry climate, no agriculture or permanent dwellings were ever established within the modern Pinnacles wilderness. Native Americans used the area primarily for hunting deer, gathering plant materials, and occasionally prescribed fire. Later European uses included hunting and occasional grazing, but impact has mostly been limited to the surrounding lowlands. Pinnacles was first designated as a national monument by President Roosevelt in 1908 and redesignated as a national park in 2012. A designated wilderness area, the Hain Wilderness, covers 60% of Pinnacles acreage. Most of the hiking trails and unique geologic formations are located in the wilderness. Roads, campgrounds, picnic areas, and visitor centers are located in non-wilderness. As we know, the main purpose of a designated wilderness is to protect wilderness character. The Wilderness Act of 1964 defines the 5 qualities of wilderness character as natural, untrammeled, solitude, undeveloped, and other features of value. So, in addition to the historical impact of humans on the park, which I mentioned, there are also several contemporary issues threatening the untrammeled status of the wilderness. Since becoming a national park in 2012, annual visitation has increased by 40%. The accompanying vegetation trampling, litter, noise, and traffic impacts the land, infrastructure, and overall visitor experience. Human population and associated development of agriculture, ranching, oil drilling, and housing has also increased in the surrounding area. These activities have minor direct impacts on the park, but major potential impacts on wildlife, habitat, and long-term wilderness qualities outside the park boundaries. Also, invasive species control and California condor restoration require regular hands-on actions by park staff. These may be net positive actions, but they still have their impacts on wilderness qualities and must be evaluated. And finally, I'm obligated to include climate change as a potential impact. In 2013, Pinnacles staff completed a general management plan. This plan spells out the park's mission and purposes, best practices for day-to-day management, and specific actions to take over the next few years. It also describes several of the threats and opportunities facing the park, but not specifically for how they affect wilderness character. One of the management action items in the general management plan is to develop a wilderness stewardship plan. Currently, without a wilderness stewardship plan, the Pinnacles Wilderness is managed piecemeal, with park staff responding to issues and incidents individually. A wilderness stewardship plan would give the staff better practices and procedures for dealing with wilderness issues, potential management actions to not only maintain but improve the wilderness character, a better understanding of how research and monitoring can protect wilderness qualities, the ability to proactively pursue opportunities to mitigate threats, and the ability to expand the influence of wilderness management concepts. All wildernesses in the US are supposed to have a wilderness stewardship plan, and most follow guidelines published by the National Park Service in its Wilderness Stewardship Plan Handbook. It's kind of hard to read here, but this table in the handbook outlines the recommended planning process. The major steps include public scoping, data gathering, and environmental assessments. This process should look pretty familiar to all of us by now. It is a prototypical example of a rational, comprehensive planning process. In this course's week 6 posts, each of us highlighted some non-standard best practices to include when designing a planning process based on what we have learned throughout the course. Reading through these posts, I noticed we had a general consensus on a few of these best practices. So as a supplement to the standard planning process, I recommend that Pinnacle's planners might incorporate these into their wilderness stewardship plan in order to make a more modern and effective plan. First, we asked for transparency in goals, power dynamics, and assumptions. Pinnacle's planners should clearly define the purpose of the plan and objectives of the public engagement and how decisions will be made. For example, Yosemite National Park is currently in the middle of developing their own wilderness stewardship plan. Although Yosemite wilderness issues are larger and more complex compared to Pinnacle's, the parks share many of the same concerns like overcrowding and strong public opinions on wilderness. Pinnacle's planners could learn from the Yosemite experience, especially their strategy of being very transparent with the public with their data and decision-making processes. Second, several of us agreed that relationships are more important than the product and people are more important than research. The anticipated issues within wilderness management are not likely to be scientific problems, which are solvable with existing or new research. The problems are likely to be messy or wicked and therefore require a community consensus about what the goals and actions should be. Developing quality relationships with partner organizations and the public will lead to support for the plan and additional sources of knowledge. So rather than expecting consensus from the traditional agency-mandated public comment system, a more useful and productive public engagement process would be to meet directly with interested organizations. Groups like the Amamutsun Tribal Band, Pinnacle's partners, the California Wilderness Coalition, and the Access Fund represent a broad spectrum of stakeholders and have already expressed their interest by participating in the general management plan process. Having wilderness-focused meetings with these groups would allow them to share their concerns and priorities, provide feedback on alternative actions, build trust and ownership of both the plan and the wilderness itself, and better understand the values and desires of each other. Building these strong relationships will also be valuable in quickly and agreeably addressing future issues. In addition, Pinnacles could partner with local organizations to gather enough information to write their wilderness stewardship plan rather than conducting new research altogether. For example, the Ventana Wilderness Alliance operates trail crews and volunteer rangers in the nearby Los Padres National Forest. They could share their understanding of the behavior of local wilderness users and how to maintain campsites and trails in similar terrain. Our third topic is transboundary considerations. It is increasingly apparent that merely protecting a few scattered parcels of wilderness will not be adequate in solving global environmental protection issues. Environmental protection must extend into neighboring properties and into the mindset of the community. National parks, including Pinnacles, have a reputation of expertise and integrity. Pairing that with an ongoing public engagement process, Pinnacles can protect more than just what is within their boundaries. They can educate neighboring farmers and ranchers about how to manage their land for both productivity and ecosystem services. They can encourage local government leaders to implement environmentally friendly policies, and they can inspire local citizens to support environmental protection and adjust their own behaviors accordingly. And finally, the plan should be a living plan, owned by the staff and the public. If you review old protected area plans, there is a tendency for the initial high priority actions to be implemented right away. with lower priority actions forgotten about after years of distractions and staffing turnover. The gathering dust phenomenon, if you will. New plans should have built-in processes to adapt the plan based on monitoring and new public input. The goal for the Pinnacle's Wilderness Stewardship Plan is to always be up to date and regularly referenced by staff and the public. These recommendations may not be drastic changes to the current planning paradigm, but it seems to me like a few adjustments to our way of thinking about planning and our attitudes toward partners can go a long way towards more successful plans. So thanks for listening, and thanks for another great course full of discussion and learning. I'm really looking forward to watching all of your presentations too. Have a great afternoon, and I'll talk to you all soon.